Hello viewers, I am Mushahid Hussain Sayed from Pakistan with the first episode in 2025 of Global South Voices on behalf of CGTN, China's global television network for the world. Global South Voices is a new initiative of CGTN which presents a different perspective representing voices from the Global South, which is the world's majority. The two sessions that convene in Beijing in March are important in formulation of China's policies, China's strategies, where the elected representatives of the people convene in Beijing to discuss, to decide the way forward on various issues facing the people of China and the foreign policy and economic policy and other policies in different domains. And these sessions are very instructive because they discuss a whole set of issues ranging from economy, representing the governance model of China, which is represented in this whole process democracy, as well as new challenges like green development. In today's program, we will focus on all these aspects. We are very fortunate that the keynote speaker for this program is a very distinguished elder statesman of the Global South, Prime Minister of Nepal, Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli, a good friend of mine of long standing, four-term Prime Minister, and I would call him an elder statesman of South Asia. We also have a very distinguished and diverse panel of guests from different parts of the world. We have from Africa, from Zambia, Dr. Fred Mumbai, President of the Socialist Party of Zambia and a very prominent activist. We have from India, Muhammad Saqib, who is the convener of the Center of Geoeconomics for the Global South, with the abbreviation COGS, C-O-G-G-S. And he is also a long-standing friend of China and an expert on issues facing the Global South. We have from France, Monsieur Arnaud Bertrand, who is an entrepreneur and also the founder and CEO of Me and Chi. And he's also very active on the social media. And we have from Latin America, from Brazil, the biggest country of that continent, Professor Jose Ricardo from the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. China's economy is witnessing a transition from high growth to high quality development. And that is also illustrated by China's outreach to the Global South and indeed to the world. For instance, out of 193 members of the United Nations, 130 countries have more trade with China than they have with the United States. And in 2024, China posted the highest ever trade surplus of any country, a whopping $1 trillion. So I would like to ask Mr. Saqib, how do you see China's transition from high growth to high quality development?
So thank you so much to you and to CGTN for this great initiative. Yeah, about your question on, I think the transition from the high growth to high quality growth. I think this is very important for China, and I think it's a very wise decision. Basically, what it is doing is that China is now emphasizing quality over quantity. And that is what probably some people outside China do not really understand very well, or probably even if they understand, they misuse it. So China's emphasis is on technology, innovation, and intelligent manufacturing, basically. That is what the quality over quantity happens. And probably because when you are transitioning from the quantity to quality, the growth sometimes slows down. It has to slow down for some time to come. So you look at if the numbers of the global of the Chinese GDP, they have reduced, but that does not mean that they have reduced for good or China is getting into some kind of a economic recession. But this is because of the transition. These numbers have to go down and they will come up again sooner or later. The other things which China is doing, that the financial reforms are happening, domestic consumption they are trying to increase, the social security spendings have increased, and they are working on HR quality. So whatever China is doing as of today, from moving, this is a very very important initiative, number of important initiatives by China, and it is kind of a learning experience for other developing countries which have not reached the level of China but will be reaching at the level of China's growth, and should follow this China's model of development. Probably that is what unnerves the West and USA especially. And maybe if you look at it, there are a lot of talks about Chinese deceleration of economy and all. So this is what I have to say.
Thank you. I think there were very useful insights that how China's transition is being made. I was reading, I remember last year, the Economist magazine published from London, and they had the cover story, China, the scientific superpower. And they said that China is now competing and is far ahead of many countries in the West, plus Japan, in science and technology. Artificial intelligence, 5G, robotics, cloud computing. But at the same time, Monsieur Bertrand, we see in the West voices of gloom and doom, doomsday scenario, nitpicking on Chinese data that, oh, the property boom is no longer there. This is the problem, that is the problem. And I just mentioned the trade surplus. So how do you view this Chinese transition from high growth to high quality development and its implications globally? Monsieur Arnaud Bertrand.
Yes, there is a bit of a paradox because on one hand, you have the sort of China collapse narrative, which a lot of media like to write about, especially The Economist, by the way. I think I calculated at some point how many covers they did on this very topic, predicting the collapse of China, and I think I arrived at above 10 in the past 20 years. So it's a common theme. So on one hand, there is the theme, but on the other hand, you can see that the West is simultaneously very worried about China's rise. And that's very clear through their actions that they are taking to contain China's rise. So, for instance, you can see all the measures that the US is taking, export controls for the semiconductors, or banning Chinese EVs, putting 100% tariffs, which is the same as banning. All measures like that, which are quite inconsistent with China that would be collapsing. It's more consistent with China that is actually rising economically, on which they feel threatened by, basically. On the transition, back to your question, from high growth to high quality development, I think that China is at a pivotal moment. And it's indeed a pretty complicated moment for the Chinese economy, because they're changing model. Up until recently, they were focusing on manufacturing for Western or foreign companies. As we all know, it was the factory of the world. and a large part of their economy was also based on real estate, which was between around 25 to 30% of GDP. And they are shifting that by basically going up the value chain. So instead of manufacturing for others, they are more and more starting to manufacture for themselves, becoming the brand.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Ricardo in Brazil. So amidst all these US-China trade friction, how do you see China maintaining that economic stability and its impact on different parts of the global south, particularly your continent?
Actually, as you well said, the relationship between China and the Latin American countries are increasing tremendously. You can see, like last year in 2024, China and Brazil celebrated 50 years of diplomatic ties, and our trade, the import and export, was of 157.4 billion US dollars in 2023, and 2024, 157.9 billion US dollars. It's a big volume, not only talking about trade, but also foreign direct investments. And China is fighting to reform the global governance and to regain multilateralism. As you can see, now the global south countries is starting to gain voices and also muscles. So we are trying to make a different move from the previous the World Economic Order. And for that, China is implementing not only the Belt and Road Initiative, but also is developing bilateral and multilateral trades, as well as discussing within international blocks such as the BRICS, how we can have alternatives. So China is doing a great job in this term, and we can see with several different initiatives, such as what happened so far since Deng Xiaoping opened the market and promoted the reform in 1978. From 1978 until 2020, China successfully took out 770 million people out of poverty. And this number is not was not calculated by Chinese institutions. The World Bank informed this tremendous successful goal of taking so many people out of poverty. So again, China, for sure, with 1.4 billion people, will face several challenges, not only these current ones, but also in the near future. But they are doing a great job in order to have in 2049, when China will celebrate its 100 years of its foundation, a very solid and strong country.
Now, when we talk of economic strength, economic growth, these are the backbone of any country. But a society's resilience is measured by the governance and the kind of governance model that countries have. So I would like to see this comparison of what the Chinese system offers, their version of democracy, and what the West offers. Mohammad Saqib Saab, I would like to ask you this question.
We know that conventional democracy is not really performing the way it has to be, and there has to be a new model. And China has shown that model. So in the Chinese democracy, there is collective leadership. There's focus on development. Then one of the most important things of Chinese democracy is that they can contextualize their culture. It is they contextualize their culture and historical lineage, which is very, very important. Which is civilized, only a civilization can do it. America cannot probably, even they will not understand that how to contextualize a governance structure based on culture and history. And they fear it because now probably the West sees that there is another alternative of governance which is performing and becoming, I do not know how popular it is today, but it is very workable and could be popular in times to come, and they just cannot accept it. like any other thing, that any other system, any other economy, any other country could look better than them. And that is the issue. That's why they just, create a lot of negative propaganda against China or this system.
Over to you, Mr. Arnaud Bertrand, because you are in France in the West. So, how do you see this issue of democracy and the West's constant criticism of the Chinese political system? And how do you place that in this context? Monsieur Arnaud Bertrand.
The two most important aspects of China's system and how it differs from the West is, first of all, what whole process means, I think, is that it's China sees democracy as a constant process of engagement between the government of the people in order to have policies which are, as responsive as possible to people's needs and are shaped in real time, as opposed to just at election time. That's one aspect. So this constant feedback, back and forth mechanism between the people and the government. And another key aspect, I think, and very important, is meritocracy, where rulers in China, as we all know, are selected based on meritocratic criteria. And that's actually been the case for a long time, since the Tang Dynasty, where all the officials in China were at the time selected based on the imperial exams. Now it's called the Gaokao, but it's the same concept. And then they are promoted in their career based on their achievements as officials. So you start off by, managing like a village or a small county, and then if you do a good job, you get to manage a bigger place, like a city on that province, and so on and so forth. So the idea is to have a system where political legitimacy is continuously earned through tangible achievements rather than through ballots.
Mr. Jose Ricardo, in Brazil, how do you view this comparison between the Western and the Chinese system, and often the Western critique of China, whether it's well-founded or not, from your perspective in South America?
Well, one of the things that grabs me my attention is that China never tried, Senator Mushahid, to apply this Chinese style democracy to any other country. They have been showing to the world that they have their own democracy, their own way of planning, of establishing the public policies. And they have been successfully achieving that since its foundation in 1949, after Mao Zedong finally made one People's Republic of China. So they started applying, for example, with this 5 years plans in between 52 to 1953. And after that, they always tried to provide, the Chinese government tried their best to provide a people's-centered policy. So, in other words, the Chinese-style democracy is always seeking for the development for the best of its people. And I'm not only telling about its domestic affairs, but also it's important to discuss about the basis of the Chinese diplomacy, which firstly, it combines the 5 principles of coexistence, which is the non-aggression between countries, the non-interference in internal affairs, the equality, the mutual benefits, and also the peaceful coexistence by itself. So China, again, is trying to solve its own problems by establishing its own way, and also it's throughout dialogue with mutual respect and reciprocity is trying to establish a new economic order throughout the reform of global governance and also to regain the multilateralism of the world.
Dr. Fred Mumbai, we have been discussing the China's system of whole process democracy versus the Western model. What is your take on that? How do you find the comparison between the two models, and which in your view is perhaps a better model or a more workable model?
I can say that in a truly free world, democracy has many ways of expression, has many forms of expression. And each path is different. Each country has got its own history, has got its own circumstances. So there isn't one form of democracy that fits all. It can't be a straitjacket. Recently, there has been a lot of attention paid to the Los Angeles wildfires. Many people believe that a fire of this magnitude, which has not been extinguished for such a long time, is proof of the failure of governance in the United States, and that the country is unable to provide the most basic livelihood security for its people. It's true. Despite being the richest country, there's still so many hungry mouths in the United States. That system was based on colonizing others. That system was based on humiliating others. That system was based on unequal relationships with others. It's an exploitative system. It's a system that leads to the degradation of human beings. It can't be a model for Africa. Africa has to look at a country like China, which has no colonies, classical colonies or neo-colonies, which has no relationships of exploitation with others, which has no relationship of master and servant with others.
Thank you, Dr. Fred Mumbai, for your answer. And when we discuss issues of China's development in the context of these two sessions, we are also looking at new challenges. I would like to ask Mr. Muhammad Saqib in Delhi, how does he view this historic transformation which has been led by climate change, environmental concerns, that this energy transition, because this affects not just China, but it affects the whole world, particularly the global south.
And, most of the damage is done to global south through this environmental disasters and all. And somehow, whether China accepts it or not, but a lot of global south countries think that it's not only global south's environmental problem, but global south's all problems and all. They see China some kind of a leadership role for everything. And whatever China could do as an individual country and as help to the environment, they have been doing it. So you must see this environmental blockage from the West to China it's an overall, stop China strategy of the West. And I think if China, and including the other like China, India, South Africa, Brazil, all the big countries, if they come together with the other global South countries and all, probably then we can mitigate some of the disasters which are likely to happen. This thing, but the China will have to take the lead in this.
Mr. Arnaud Bertrand, in France, we see still a lot of criticism of China in the West. Now they accuse China of green overcapacity. And that's a new theme they have built up. Yes, China is the leader in green development. Yes, China is a leader in electric vehicles, which is good for a clean and green environment. But there's overcapacity and solar panels and so forth. So what is your take on that and the Western critique of China's green development initiatives? Monsieur Arnaud Bertrand.
It's basically a way of saying that they are outcompeted basically, and it's a justification to put barriers. Because when you think about it, um, overcapacity is a bit of a strange concept. What it basically means is that China will be producing more than it needs, or that the market can absorb. But when you look at what China is producing, and when you look at the scale of the challenge, climate change, right? China is actually not producing enough at all. If we wanted to take this problem seriously, if we wanted to really transition from an energy mix that is still very much dominated by oil and gas, then we will need probably to produce like 10 times what we are producing today, China included. So overcapacity is is a strange way of putting it, when actually when you look at the challenge, there is critical undercapacity. Actually, the big chunk of EVs that China exports to the West is actually Western brands like Tesla, for instance. Tesla is the biggest by number of cars. It's the most EVs that China exports to Europe. So the problem is not so much overcapacity. The problem is more with those brands. Actually, why do they choose to produce and manufacture their cars in China rather than in Europe? And so it's more questions about Europe's competitiveness in terms of manufacturing for those industry, rather than overcapacity in China. So this whole narrative, no matter how you look at it, it makes quite little sense, actually.
And Professor Ricardo, you are in Brazil, and Brazil in 2025 will be hosting COP30. So how do you view China's green development model? Can it be a global benchmark for global climate change? And what will be its impact in the forthcoming COP30 conference, which your country, Brazil, will be hosting later this year in 2025?
That's a very good point, Santo Mushahid, especially because after President of US, Donald Trump, announced that the US, that it will cease participation on the Paris Agreement, the Brazilian ambassador, Andrea Correa do Lago, who is the chairman of the COP30, already informed that it may change the fact that US will cease participation in the Paris Agreement will change substantially how things will work during the COP30, which will be held here in the north of Brazil in the end of this year, in the end of 2025. As you said, China is a global benchmark for the green development. Brazil imported, roughly speaking, 4.3 billion US dollars in terms of electric vehicles from China in 2024. And the ranking was of 13th most imported product from China in 2023 to the top fourth most imported product from China to Brazil, which was an increase of 108%. But as I mentioned before, the basis of the relationship between China and Brazil is always consists of mutual benefits, reciprocity, and also win-win situation. And it's a good opportunity also for other countries to get in touch and intensify the exchange with China in order to implement these new technologies in the other countries.
I would like to move on to Africa now, to our friend Dr. Fred Mumbai in Zambia, that how does he view this Green Development Initiative of China and its implications for Africa, which is also one of the key components of the Global South?
I personally think that solar energy should be of great importance to the development of Africa. And I'm also very interested in a recent development. Recently, there has been another important technological development. The Tianjin Institute of Industrial Biotechnology of the Chinese Academy of Sciences is testing the large-scale production of starch synthesized from carbon dioxide. I don't know much about this technology, but in principle, if Africa can use solar power on a large scale to generate electricity and then convert the electricity into food in some form, in some way, it is hoped that Africa can tackle seriously its hunger problem. Or I can say hunger in Africa can be completely solved. But there's hypocrisy here, especially from the West. On the one hand, they are calling us to reduce carbon emissions. On the other hand, they are not providing Africa with the green energy solutions needed. Most of the green energy solutions we're having in Africa are coming from China, are with Chinese assistance. There is too much talk, but very little action on the green energy from the West.
Thank you, Dr. Fred Mumbai, for your answers. To the end of our program with these insights, which started from economic development in China, the two sessions, governance in China, and of course the global challenge, which is the borderless issue of climate change, where again China is playing a very positive and a leadership role that is widely claimed, as you can see from the remarks of our distinguished and diverse participants in this show. Before we conclude, I would like to ask our eminent keynote speaker, the Honorable Prime Minister of Nepal, Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli, for his concluding remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, Namaste. As the Prime Minister of Nepal, a proud and steadfast voice of the Global South, I extend my heartfelt appreciation to CGTN for this meaningful initiative, one that amplifies the hopes, aspirations, and collective wisdom of the Global South. It is through such endeavors that our voices find resonance on the world stage, advocating for a future defined by shared progress, dignity, and mutual prosperity. During my recent visit to China, I had the privilege of engaging in profound and fruitful discussions with Chinese leaders, including His Excellency President Xi Jinping. I witnessed with great admiration China's remarkable strides in development, its breathtaking progress across sectors, its far-sighted leadership in fostering regional economic connectivity, and its resolute commitment to address the defining challenge of our time, climate change. Nepal stands as a committed partner in the Belt and Road Initiative, which embodies the noble of a community with the shared destiny, one that unites the Global South and humanity as a whole in pursuit of a fairer, more inclusive, and more harmonious world. Together, we walk this path, guided by the principles of mutual respect, sustainability, and equity. Yet, even as we advance, we are acutely aware of the grave challenges that looms over our planet. Nepal, home to the majestic Himalayas, is among the most vulnerable nations to the perils of climate change. We have seen its impact firsthand. Melting glaciers, erratic weather patterns, and the disruption of livelihoods. In this shared struggle, we deeply value China's leadership in championing green development, offering a beacon of hope and action in our common fight for environmental sustainability. On behalf of the government and the resilient people of Nepal, I reaffirm my unwavering commitment to deeper cooperation within the Global South. Let us stand together, stronger and more united, to build a future where every nation, big or small, thrives with dignity and opportunity.
Thank you, Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, for your concluding remarks and your participation in today's segment of Global South Voices. And we also wish to thank all our distinguished participants who took part in this program from different countries and continents. I am Mushahid Hussain Sayed in Islamabad. You can also find us on CGTN app, YouTube, X, and Facebook. And stay tuned to Global South Voices, which is the flagship show of the CGTN, for a different perspective on the Global South, representing the global majority. See you next time. Thank you so much.